talking about your cycles decks.
Awesome.
Yes. And I wanted to talk not about like we're going to go deeper into just like what is the cycles approach, but I want to talk more about the product production process. And I know it was a while ago. When did the cycles decks come out? It's been
It's been
years.
years. That's a fantastic question. My first deck was the lateral lisp deck, and I
Mhm.
think the cycles wasn't too much longer after that, but it took time um, because target selection was a big
Yeah.
consideration, and I know that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
But I spent so much time on trying to just get appropriate targets for phonological intervention. So it took a while. Yeah. But it's
Yeah.
been years.
Okay.
It's been a while. It's been out a while, but I couldn't even tell you what year it was.
Well, then that's a perfect segue. So,
Yeah.
how did you start with the idea, like, I want to make decks for the cycle approach, or did Jenny approach you, or let's just start from the very beginning?
Yeah. So it was my idea for the cycles because I had done the lateral lisp deck, which was actually Jenny's idea. The lateral lisp, she's like, you have a product in the way that you treat that. And I thought, really? I don't know. But then once I kind of like got through that process, I thought, I think there are some other possibilities for other approaches because I was really tired of grabbing just a resource from, I won't say who,
Mhm.
but literally having to cross off half the words because they were not appropriate for phonological intervention because of the phonetic context of the word. Like there were other sounds in that word that made the target sound difficult to say,
Can you give an
or they were
example of one of those?
yeah. So like for example, kids who are fronting, right? We want to focus on the K or the G sound because if they're fronting, they're producing K or G as either a T or D in the front. That's why we call it fronting.
Yep.
But if we're trying to target K, for example, we do not also want that word that we're going to target that K with to have a T in it
So, a word
because
like
that's
cat.
yes,
Mhm.
cat, coat, kite, all of those words that are in whatever, articulation resource you have, all those words are in there, but they're terrible target words for phonological intervention because they're not
Right.
facilitative. They really create like this, ask a kid who's fronting to say kite, cat, coat, it's
Not a
really,
great
really challenging.
first set of words to try with them. Maybe later
No,
on when they're
down
ready.
the
And
road.
it's generalizing,
Exactly.
and those are those tricky targets that you want to go back and treat. But at the beginning, we don't want to have the error sound in there with the target sound.
And I think that's what, when we say facilitative context, that's just like SLP speak for we want the sound that we're targeting easy for the child to say. We
Hmm.
just want to make it an easy context, an easy word. And so that's kind of the whole process behind the cycles decks. So all of the decks are monosyllabic words because for cycles specifically, but I would encourage any phonological intervention you're using to primarily be monosyllabic words at first, just because, like you said, we want those sounds at first to be easy to say and we want a really easy word.
Right.
So,
And then
and if we can
increase complexity later.
down the road,
Yeah.
we can do that absolutely down the road. But yeah, exactly. Like you're not going to ask a child to say cupcake right off the bat if they're trying to work on the K sound. Too challenging. But down the road, possibly. So yeah, that's kind of the genesis of the cycles decks.
Great. So you had the idea, you knew what was missing in the materials that you had seen or what you were using, and you knew what you were looking for. So when you were finally able to create those target word lists, because that's what you did first, right? So you started with just the
Yeah.
list of the words that you wanted before any images were made or anything like that. So when you're making those lists, for the cycles decks, there's only 5 or 6 words per target sound. So how did you narrow that down, and how did you choose that
Well,
those were the words you wanted?
yeah, so I'll just kind of show you really, really quickly, actually. So just everybody's going to ask me about this. So I keep all my Bjorem decks in binders like this in
Everyone asks me about it. I tell everyone that, and I'm like, but it's not my idea. I got it from Amy.
I I just think it's easier to scroll through and I can turn the pages and see the pictures easily. So yeah, it's just like baseball card holders. That's all it is. You know,
Yes, I actually tell
straight
people
cards.
that too, whenever they're asking what size of the speech sound cues. This is like just
Yeah,
a little side tangent, but if anyone is listening and is curious, if anyone is wondering what size of the speech sound cues to get, I'm always like, well, the big ones are great for little ones or group
yeah,
therapy, but if you are trying to organize a bunch of materials, or you're an SLP on the go, or you're doing like some groups that have different sounds, then putting them in a binder is easier because you can just pull them out and go and like look for what you need and not have to shuffle through a whole deck. So that's what
exactly.
I also love about, like, I have all my cycles decks and my minimal pairs decks. Everything is in that binder
Same.
because you have to be able to grab and go. And I got that idea from you. It's
Uh,
genius.
I'm glad you like that idea. It's yeah, I don't even know if I got that idea from me. I may have stolen it from
Well,
somebody else, but
whoever
it works.
started it.
It's works super, super well. But yeah, so for example, like these are the five, because for any phonological intervention, you don't need a ton of words. You don't need like 25 words to target a particular phonological error pattern. And especially for the cycles approach, you only need 3 to 5 words to target in therapy. And so I usually have like between 5 and 6 words to choose from. But for example, I know it's probably backwards, but this is from the initial and final consonant deletion
Mhm.
deck. But you can see they're words like, I know
Ape,
I have the
nap.
fuzziness on, but there's ape and up. Like if we're targeting final P, I want it to be super easy, like just a vowel plus that P sound, right? Or something else like, what was that? What's that one? Nap. And that one is
Pop.
hop and mop. Now those are early developing sounds, so hopefully the child is able to, get that, have the other sounds there. So I'm not going to put like a CH sound at the beginning of a word to make it more challenging for that child. You want to think of other early developing sounds too to pair with those words if you're targeting that final consonant. So it's basically just about making the entire word easy to produce, or just easier to produce for that particular child. So that's just kind of a little example.
Okay. Perfect. So, and do you think about like the different vowels that are in the words, or was it more just about like that initial sound?
More, I tended to really focus on the vowels in the gliding deck because there's a liquids and glides deck. And what I love about the glides deck, so if you, any SLP, here's a huge tip for you guys. If you incorporate phonemic awareness into your speech therapy sessions, like just teaching kids about the individual sounds in the words, and eventually get them to the point where they can manipulate those sounds to change words, right? Like what if we say, like for example, I'll get at one of these. Like we have reef, ring, what's that one? Reach.
Reach.
So they all start with re, and they only differ by the last sound. So the gliding deck, especially because I have found when I work with kids and I'm trying to teach R or L, that neighboring vowel can be pretty facilitative for those kids. So I wanted to group those words by neighboring vowel.
And I love the
So like,
E for
yeah,
that
so
too.
those are all the
Mhm.
E, right? Re, but they only differ by one sound. And so this also is really easy to start to incorporate phonemic awareness, where you can start talking about, well, what sound does that one have at the end, right? Do you hear that that's a
Yeah.
different sound? What if I take the reach, but I take ch away and I add the f sound? Now what's the word? Reef. And
Right.
so you can start to teach that, hey, there are individual sounds in these words. And kids who are given speech therapy, where we just focus on the speech as like the production practice, they're going to
Mhm.
improve. But kids where we incorporate phonemic awareness and we teach them that all of these words have individual sounds and we can manipulate those kids actually, not only does that encourage pre-literacy skills, but their speech improves quicker too.
Yes,
So
I actually have just started doing that with one of my clients when I came in, and right before our session started, she was working on her phonics spelling homework. And I was noticing some things there was some connections there between speech and literacy. And that's what started that whole post that Lorna and I did last week because I just started really going down a rabbit
Yeah.
hole of thinking about that. And it's fascinating how much they really do show up together. And even just that word, reach. Like I like that it's the CH at the end because you can also talk about, well, there's two letters that make one sound there.
Oh yeah, for
And there's all these other different rules because there's so many spelling rules and it's so hard. So that was going to be my next question for you was what was the reasoning, I guess, why did you choose to put the word on the front versus you could have the word on the back? Like, was there a thought process behind that? Were you like, I definitely want the word on the
yeah,
front and not the back?
definitely for this deck, and that's not true for all my decks, but for phonological interventions, especially where we want to really incorporate phonemic awareness, like understanding letter sound relationship, I wanted it on the
Hmm.
front. So this is rib, right? And so I wanted them all lowercase because that's a great way to teach those letter sound relationships. And I
Yeah.
wanted it on the front. So you can really, if you're working on, like this is from the the gliding and liquids deck, or glides and liquids deck, but I wanted it on the front so we can start to say, hey, you know, all of these words that we're practicing, what do you see at the beginning of all those words? They all have what letter there? Oh my gosh,
Hmm.
what sound does that letter make, do you think? So you can start talking about that, and making the connection for kids. So that was a really big reason that I wanted, especially for the cycles decks, to have the letters appear on the front because you can start talking about letter sound relationship immediately.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that that was one of the things that I definitely wanted to go over because we have some decks, like the box of sounds decks, where it's we don't want the words on the front
Right.
because there's multiple things you can target and it's for a different reason. And there's a reason behind why all of our decks and our cards and our artwork looks the way that it does because we're it's based off of research or it's based off of clinical
Right.
experience or there's a reason why the word is on the front versus the back
Exactly.
or the target selection and everything like that. So um, is there research about um, well, with the cycles approach, we know that you want to incorporate phonological awareness in your session.
Yes. Right.
And that's part of cycles. And you talk about that in your cycles courses. If anybody is familiar with the cycles approach or you're trying to do more research, you'll definitely see that. So I wanted to point that out as it's there and you can start working on that with this deck. What's a way that you incorporate phonological awareness with these cards, or is it more just like what you say when you point it out, or do you add extra things?
Yeah. In, like you said, in my cycles course, we go through very specific phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, activities that you can easily incorporate, like rhyming. Like I was with one child and we were doing, I think one of our words was, oh, we were doing fronting, a fronting target. So we were doing G words, right? So we had like go, goo, again, really simple monosyllabic, just consonant vowel words to make it even easier for the most, you know, like if I can choose, if our target is G in initial position, if I can do goo, go, guy, just to make it an easy word to practice, that's what we do. But what our word was goo, right? Like that green
Uh-huh.
goo. But we were playing with animals. And so it was like a perfect moment to say, oh my gosh, what does this cow say? What does the cow say? Moo. Does that rhyme with anything that we've been talking about today? Does moo rhyme with guy or does moo rhyme with goo? And so we can start talking about the end sounds the same. So you can do rhyming exercise or rhyming tasks. You can teach sound identification, like what sound do you hear at the beginning of all of our words? What letter do you see at the beginning of or at the end, depending on what you're
Mhm.
targeting? And the cycles decks, because with cycles you only target one particular sound per week, and then you just cycle to the next and until you get through all of the phonological error patterns that you want to target. Those those groups of words that you're targeting for that session, super easy to work on this. So like for, I'm trying to find, oh yeah, like even this is for from the backing, fronting and backing deck. So we're working on final T. fat, hat, bat, they all rhyme. Like those are carefully selected so that you can start to incorporate that as well too. Now, not all of them will rhyme, but I like to have some that will rhyme so that they can start to distinguish, do these rhyme, do these not rhyme? So those kinds of things. But even these are all of the target words are very carefully chosen specifically to Barbara Hodson's approach because, for example, we don't target final voiced stop consonants.
Mhm.
So you won't find final G words because we don't target those in cycles. Because if you target, like, for example, a final D, like, right, if maybe the child is backing and you want to target the D sound so that they can learn how to say that sound in the front, you're only going to target D in initial position. Because if you target in final position and you practice a word like bed
I
and you're
was
really
about to
focusing
say
on the
bed.
D, you get bed duck.
Bed. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
you get that intrusive schwa, and we don't want to do that. And we don't really have to because if we focus on the voiceless cognate, we get that within class generalization happening to where if they get the final T, most of those kids are likely going to get that final D on their own anyway. But you're going to focus on D in initial position, right? If that's the sound that we're going to be working on. So there's a lot of things that we've thought through when it comes to target selection that you're not going to find if you just open any old jumbo giant book of whatever sound you want to target, because those words are chosen based on what letter do they have at the beginning, not
Mm.
what is the phonemic context of the entire word, and is that word appropriate for this type of intervention, is it appropriate for that error pattern. And the simpler, more monosyllabic words you get, the easier it is to teach those phonemic awareness skills in your session.
Absolutely. And I think that that's another thing that I just want to highlight about your cycles decks is that it's not just taking any other speech therapy deck off of your shelf. It's taking a deck that you know that you can implement the cycles approach with fidelity, and you know that you're using a, a resource, a material that has been made by an SLP who has the experience, who has done the research, and who has kind of troubleshooted this cycles approach with that target. So if you're working on cycles and you're pulling out the liquids and glide cycles deck, you know, okay, I know that these are the best words to work on, and I know that I'm doing this the right way because it has been created by an SLP who's already troubleshooted and who already did the trial and error, so that now when I do it, I can already start this approach almost like 10 steps ahead.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It makes your planning so much easier because I've even told people, like, my therapy sessions are not fancy. I don't lesson plan. I am amazed by people that do like plan these elaborate, themes or whatever. I don't do that.
It
I
is
just like kids,
it's
what
ingrained
game do
from
you want
grad
to
school, and that's what you think when you start out, and then it's such a
No.
relief to know that you don't have to do it
Well,
that
and
way.
for speech sound disorders, the priority is your target words.
Mhm.
And really what we're finding with the research, the literature now, is that what you're targeting in therapy is probably more important than the manner with which you target it, even the
Yeah,
approach that you're using. So target selection is huge. And so if you've chosen the right words, which we've done in the cycles approach deck, you can just grab it and go. And, like, to me, that's what I spend my time lesson planning, is targets.
right.
What target words are going to be appropriate for this particular child, given the approach I'm using, given their specific errors. And so that's what all of those decks have really, we've carefully thought through. And like you said, developed by an SLP because I wanted them. I, like,
Yeah,
literally everything I've ever created is because I wanted it. I wanted it to use in my sessions, and I found a need that I wasn't finding out there, in different places, for where we buy our resources. I
yeah,
just wasn't finding it. And so even ones that are marketed as, oh, these are cycles words, you're like, that's not a cycles. Those are not cycles words. They're, you know, bisyllabic words for initial cycles. We don't do that. We want monosyllabic words. We want highly facilitative phonetic contexts. And so I just wasn't finding that. So literally that's why I developed it. I wanted it for my own practice.
yeah. I love what you mentioned about, we know the research now is saying it's more about the words that you're using to target and not the way that you're doing it. And I think that that's another thing to point out too, that as SLPs, we have so many things to think about at the same time that sometimes just doing, hi Sam, that sometimes just doing the target selection piece, sometimes that almost comes at the end because you're so worried about like, okay, what's this child's temperament? Like, what are they into? How am I going to keep them engaged? Like, are they going to be a child that's going to be all over the place? And how am I going to target this all in play? And I love the way that you mentioned just the goo and moo example. Like, you can be using these cards and embed them with other activities in play. And I know that you have a lot of really great turn taking games and things like that. But it's just so nice to know that when we're using these products in our session, even though we might have to plan some other things like how am I going to get this child moving today if they're not a child that can really sit at a table, or how am I going to really incorporate this interest that they have that's been really helping them stay motivated during our sessions. So there's so many things that we have to think about just to keep them with us and get that buy-in, that it's so nice to know that like at least I don't have to worry about target
Right.
selection today, and that part is done, and I know that I'm using the cream of the crop for cycles therapy, and I don't have to worry about
Yeah.
that piece. And I think that
You
that's
literally can just grab your binder
Mhm.
and just hit the ground running. And, especially with the cycles approach, if you're using the actual cycles approach, um, your lesson planning is done for you because you have this very cyclical way that you're targeting each word group. And every week it's different. And so you've got it ready to go. You have, and I have a cycles planning uh, sheet that I sell in a packet, and just to kind of help you understand, okay, what do I need to target for this child? What are their errors? What sounds should I be targeting? That helps you plan everything.
Yes.
That I know you can get on my website, but also on Bjorem Speech too. But I'm all about making things easier, right? Like we have a
Yeah.
to worry about. I want to make it quick, and really my whole thing, even teaching my courses, my whole reason for doing that is I want to make SLP's lives easier. And if you choose the right approach and match it to the deficit, you're going to get much more efficient progress, and those kids are going to get off your caseload faster. And that was
Yeah.
always my goal when I was in the schools. I'm even now private practice. One of the first things I tell the parents is my goal is for you not to have to come see me anymore. I want to work myself out of a job because I want your child to be intelligible and to improve their speech really quickly. And if you choose the right approach and then you choose the right targets for that approach, you will see better, quicker, more efficient improvement.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that, we just talked about the all the other things that that you have to think about for each individual child, but then there's also all the different individual approaches. And I like that, you mentioned like let's make things easier for you so that we can choose the right approach and you can feel confident in that, and we can get these kids off your caseload sooner. And we can't fix all the systemic changes that need to be fixed with caseloads, but we can at least help you try to get these kids done faster.
Right.
And that's huge. So I just have one
Yeah.
more question, and this is about the artwork. So talk a little bit about how, like, your role in the artwork. So Ruthie illustrated your decks, and so what was that like working with her, and how did you choose what you wanted the images to look like? What was important?
Well, first of all, the nice thing about Ruthie, I have chosen Ruthie to do all the artwork for all of my decks, the Cycles Approach decks and the Lateral Lift deck, is that it has this very similar look to it. So like, for example, Star, right?
I love that one.
So that I love it. And so what I love about it is it's very colorful, very engaging, representative. Like we have kids or pictures of kids with limb differences, with cochlear implants, just all wheelchairs, different, all kinds of different representation, which I love. But then also they're just simple. Like I did not want it to be distracting. Like Spoon, super simple, but
Yes, I
colorful.
was gonna mention, there's just a blank color background
Yes.
and it's just the image.
Yes, exactly. Just the image. And really we wanted to choose words, or I wanted to choose words which you're supposed to for the cycles approach to be fairly easy vocabulary. So even a hard word like splotch, which there's that three element cluster there,
Hmm.
we can talk about it. Like, what is, oh, she's got a splotch on her arm. Let's talk about what that is. So you're teaching the vocabulary if it's new vocabulary. But the images, I just love the images. Feel like they're just, oh, I got to show this is one of my favorite ones. I got to show this one. Slob.
Oh my gosh, it's
Isn't that
so good.
amazing? I love
It's
it. I
so
mean,
good.
it's funny. Like half the time the kids are like, "Oh my gosh, what is that?" So it's engaging. It keeps them engaged. So I love the artwork. I mean, but really, what the process for that was, I would have an image in my head of like, okay, what would be a really good image that would elicit the target word that I'm trying to go for, and then she just takes it and runs with it and just gets really creative, but it's still very simple for the child to understand. So yeah, a lot. I mean, yes, I come up with like, okay, for the word oops, like let's have a little boy who spills his milk, and then she comes up with that.
Yeah, so you give kind of like an idea of what
Right.
you might want. Like for star, it was star, right? That was
Star.
the,
Yeah.
and you were like, I don't want a star in the sky. I
No,
want a movie
right.
star. So just getting creative with that so that kids aren't always just seeing the same image. And
Right.
I know that you create materials for TPT, and I do as well. And sometimes we're limited with what clip art is available versus being able to work directly with an illustrator and say, like, I want this included. I want them to
Right.
be inclusive and diverse and simple, and
Exactly.
I want it to be fun and funny and different. And that's really cool. Did you ever go back and forth with her where she would send you something and you would say like, "Oh, let's add this," or was it all just?
I mean, yeah, sometimes, the editing
Mhm.
process, you're like, oh, okay, that's maybe let's just tweak that a little bit to focus on, like, I forget what it was. Maybe it was shoe and it was like maybe too much leg. So I'm like, okay, focus more on the shoe, maybe just so that the word is obviously shoe. But yeah, I'm trying to find
I
the
know
kid.
Ruthie has learned a lot about speech therapy through illustrating things and
Oh,
knowing what
yes.
is important. And yeah, she's grown a lot in that, and she spoke on that a little bit on the cruise this year.
Oh,
People asked for some really good
nice.
questions, and she
Right.
was able to kind of get in the light a little bit. And I love hearing her story about it. I should do a live with her
That
too on
That would be
her
amazing. I know.
illustrating
I'm just
process.
I'm just looking through because sometimes, if I haven't used these in a while, I kind of forget like, oh, that's right. I forgot about that particular one. But like even I love that. Like hoof, it's a unicorn hoof,
I love
right?
it.
Not just a horse, it's a unicorn. One of my and I can't remember which one it is, but I asked her because my oldest has red curly hair. So I asked her for one of the images. I'm like, can you make this a little girl in that picture to have red curly hair and a doll to look like her favorite doll when she was little? And she did. And it was like one of my
Oh,
favorite things.
that's the
And I
best.
can't find it right now. I'll have to find it. But yeah, I know. It's so much fun working with somebody as talented as Ruthie,
Yeah.
who can just take it and run with it.
She's painting a mural right now at the T-Mobile Center,
Oh,
and it's, yeah, really cool.
that is
So she's gotten to
really
do,
cool.
she's just so awesome. But I just wanted to really touch on those behind the scenes efforts that go into making a deck and a bundle of decks like this. So people
A lot.
see it when it's launched, but they don't see the like year plus
Yeah.
work that
I'm just
goes.
it's not even months. It's like almost years that some of these,
Yeah,
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 takes
it
to get
takes a
out there.
long time, and there's a lot that goes into planning it and perfecting it and making it exactly what it is. Now, my last question, I think I said it's the last question, but I did forget to ask this one. What made you decide on how to bundle them? Because we have a Cycles Bundle 1 and we have a Cycles Bundle 2.
Yeah.
So why are they separated that way? And what was the thought process behind that? Oh,
Oh,
oh, there we go.
there. Okay.
Yes.
So say that again because I missed some of it. I was getting a phone call and I forgot to put the do
Okay,
not
I thought
disturb.
that that's what was
Sorry.
happening.
I know.
Um, so I know that we have two cycles bundles. So you can
Oh
buy
yeah.
the cycles decks individually, but then there's two bundles. There's a cycles deck there's Cycles Bundle 1 that has 3 decks in it, and
Right.
Cycles Bundle 2 that has 3 decks in it. So my question was, why did you choose to separate them that way? Or
Yeah.
like, how did you choose which 3 were going together?
Well, I wanted to choose the three that were kind of most commonly addressed. So if I'm remembering correctly, and I hope I have this right. I think what we did, we put S clusters, initial and final consonant deletion, and fronting and backing together. I think those are what we put
Yeah, I
together
was gonna
for
say
the
it's either
second
those or the liquids and
liquid.
glides.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think we put those together because first of all, those are in my clinical experience, those are the more frequent of the errors that I would see with my kids who I chose to use cycles for. But also I wanted to make it like, okay, you don't have to buy all 6 because they're expensive, right? Like
Right.
just buy one bundle, and it's cheaper if you buy them in a bundle because there's a discount.
Hmm.
But that's kind of why I decided, like, let's just bundle them differently. I liked the 2 bundle situation because if you can get all 6, that's awesome. But it can
You know,
be,
sometimes those
cost.
phonological processes don't show up as
Well, yeah,
often.
and
Like
like
voicing, I feel like I see less in my practice, but with different diagnoses and things, you're going to see
right.
different.
And for example, too, like the singleton stridents,
Hmm.
those would be the ones like with S initial final position, F initial final position. That is not a primary pattern in cycles. Like we don't address those in a primary pattern. We address S clusters first.
Right. So
So
we
that was
didn't
why,
even get into that. I'm like seeing the hierarchy of cycles in my brain right now. I had
yeah.
a grad school supervisor who was very into cycles, and she like I just every time I see this image in my head, I always think about her. But there's like the primary patterns and the secondary, and there's like a whole hierarchy for it.
Right. Yeah, there is. And so I didn't want those to be a part of that bundle one because I think that's a big common mistake that we as SLPs make is to we think we got to target stopping first, which with cycles we don't target stopping by targeting S or F or SH as singletons. We target S clusters first. And once S clusters have emerged, then we can target stopping as a standalone error pattern. But many
Okay.
times once we target S clusters, sometimes those will emerge on their own. Like S's as a singleton may emerge on its own. And so that's why I didn't include that in the bundle one. So there's a lot. Like I said, there's probably, if we sat here and just talked, it would probably list like 50 different
Yeah.
considerations that were made just for the development of these decks.
Yeah. A lot of work went into them, and they're such a big hit. And I just wanted to shine some light on the pre-production process and what makes them really stand out. So thank you so much for coming and doing a live with me today, even when you weren't feeling well.
And
I'm going to post this on our Instagram. I'm also going to try to save it and add it to a blog post and YouTube and somewhere other places that are going to be easier to find, and link it in the product description. So once it's up there, people will be able to find this and learn more about it.
wonderful. Awesome. Well,
Um,
thanks for chatting. Super fun. I love
Thank
talking about these
you.
things.
All right, feel better.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.